I'm joined by the Chairman of the House Committee on Science and Tech, Honorable Dachung Musabagos. Welcome to Politics Today.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening, Nigeria.
Honorable, you followed appointment of ministers, swearing in, and now the inaugural FEC has held. It now shows that everything is in full swing. Are you as optimistic that this ministerial setup as it is now will deliver the dividends that the president has indeed hoped for with regards to his promises to Nigerians? Are you optimistic with regards to all that considering all you've seen so far?
Well, Terry, I will have to be patriotic at this particular level that every Nigerian citizen is very hopeful that the ministers that have just been sworn in line with the president's agenda, will be able to drive the economy to see how we'll be able to come out of the present situation that we are in. But first of all, government must own up to the fact that Nigerians are suffering with what we are going through on a daily basis by our people. So, meaning, and it's very good that they started on this very note, that look, they need to reform the economy. I could have so much doubt if we were talking of economic recovery, because government year in and year out talk about economy recovery, but no. But if we are now looking at reform, look at reform and restructuring the economy, then that we will have a little hope. But again, looking at reform of the economy, at what particular area, at what and how will that is the issue and the question that every Nigerian will be asking at this particular moment. Because Nigerians will need, in as much as they will have long, short-term plans, Nigerians need a short-term plan that will take them to the long-term plan. Because at the process and at the level that we are in now, and looking at even debt servicing, 90% of our IGR in debt servicing, it shows that there's a problem somewhere. So in problem somewhere, we have to be able to look at it critically. Let the ministers and the president not be economical or politically right at this particular moment. Tell Nigerians the true situations of what is truly on ground. And if so be, so that all of us, across party lines, across religious lines, across ethnic groups, we should be able to come together to see how we'll be able to reform the economy. And in reforming the economy, if the previous way of how things have been done is not working, this is a time that we need to be able to. So when I'm talking about restructuring, when people talk about restructuring, they try to be able to look at, let's divide states, let's give, no. This is a time that we need to be able to look at how we're going to restructure, how we're going to reform. And the new Executive Council, in the next 6 months, what we should be able to looking at is that how can they be able to work with the National Assembly in reforming the economy in the sense that there are a lot of legislation that needs to come into play to be able to boost the economy. But if it is with what we have at the present moment, and with the way they want to reform I don't think they're going to get it. But a lot of legislation needs to come into play. Let me give you an example with the exclusive list. A lot of things are in the exclusive list that I don't see us getting any way forward without looking at the Constitution first, because a lot of things in the Constitution, especially the exclusive list, needs to get off the exclusive. The burden on the federal government is so huge that it will not and it cannot carry the economic reform that it so requires. I'm happy that in the 9th Assembly we were able to look at to drop the issue of rail, to drop the issue of power. So more needs to be done in terms of the federal road trunks.
But does it tell you that the state governments can shoulder these responsibilities? I mean, you look at how the state governments perform, and you think that if you saddle them with more responsibilities
Terry, it's not even us looking at what the state government needs to look at. is to be able to look at what conducive environment can this legislation will be able to give to bring in foreign direct investment, that will be able to have a conducive environment for businessmen and businesses to strive in the country. If we are going to wait on government to completely reform the economy, then we will never do it. Now look at the West. The West, government don't depend. Government rather depend on business people for the government to be stable. But here in Nigeria and other parts of Africa, business people rely on government to succeed. So we need to be able to turn the table and twist the coin. Look, government needs to open up, give a conducive environment. And when business people now see that they have a conducive environment, when business people now see that they have legislation that they can come into the country to be able to open up, to be able to industrialize the country, not a way that just you have a monopoly of one business or two business people that will get tax rebate from government for them to build industries or for their businesses to strive. That is not the way to economy recovery. Economy recovery, when you look at insecurity, when you look at power, when you look at your transportation, be it the marine, be it water, all you look at all those areas. The business people that have the money would have said, look, Nigeria is now ready for business. But when we just have to wait for government, that government, I want to bring in this, reduce tax for me, then we have not yet, we're not ready.
When we talk about government and how much they need the private sector, sometimes we tend to forget that the government we talk about should not only be the federal government. Now, the responsibility of addressing this issue of the economy also lies with the state government, doesn't it? So what will the state governments be doing in this regard? You talk about tax reforms and all those things that you talk about. Revenue generation, which is critical as well. And the government is looking towards how it can boost that. But if the government continues to generate revenue and the states continue to come and take that revenue.
A lot of states, you see, the federal government as it is today, and that is why a lot of people have been talking about restructuring. A lot of states, if given the opportunity and if a lot of these burdens that are on the exclusive list, which lies with the federal government, states are being given the opportunity to do all this. Then the federal government, from the federation account, will rely on the states. Not the states now rely on the federal government. We have discussed this not once, not twice. Like in my state, I know with mineral resources within the state, we can be able to do that. We can be able to mine all the mineral resources that we have within our state. We'll be able to give the federal government whatsoever percentage, we'll be able to give the federal government to run the federal government. And our state with that will be able to look, we have the issue of infrastructure development that we need to put in every state, and we will be able to do that. But not just to wait that the federal government should come and mine the mineral resources that are within our state. The mining cadastral should give license of what is happening within my state, and for us to come and start fighting and agitating for 13% or 10% derivation. These are issues that we need to sit down as a people to look at legislation very critically until the state is now viable, until the local government can stand on its own. Then we will now start looking at, this local government, they have an interest to invest in this local government.
So,
I'll be able to
that is another thing. When you talk about the need for states to control their resources, if states control their resources and the local governments do not get to share from that, the resources, or even contribute because of the absence of the local government chairman, how is that going to work?
Absolutely. There is no way, if a state has its own autonomy, and every local government has its own autonomy within the state, automatically the local government chairman takes charge of security, takes charge of IGR, takes charge of infrastructure within the state. Like now, my state, the local government councils have been locked for over how many weeks now on issues that we know that it's purely political. purely political. But if this issue of local government in my state and other places is being addressed, to have a local government that is being handled by the state governor, a local government that is being handled as a state governor, which he is the chief security officer, a local government that has autonomy, not a local government again. When we are talking about handled by the state governor, supervised by the state governor, not to just wait for every local government to get allocation at the federal level. But when a local government has its own autonomy, it's the state governor that will even rely on the local government to bring in IGR into the state, the state coffers.
Speaking of IGR, there are concerns as to diversifying the economy. We've heard about that by diversifying the economy for quite a while now, since the concerns about our oil, price of oil started to dwindle. Now, this administration has introduced the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy.
Yeah.
What do you think that this will bring to the table, and how would you advise?
The marine and blue economy, it's when you go to some certain countries that have a high level of coastal areas, you will see that that is one of the major source of IGR they have. You want to talk about Nigeria, they want to talk about Lagos, Bayelsa, Rivers, and other states that can be able to generate. When you have that, it's not just about having a nomenclature. Like I said again, the legislation in it. We cannot just rely that we have not opened the coastal areas, that is only Port Harcourt, that you now have ships coming in. What of other areas? You can be, even when you dredge the River Benue, ships can come down, even down to Benue State to address the issue, the issues in the north. Ships can go down to other areas, down to Bayelsa, to address other issues. But when you catch everything in one place, even with the marine and the blue economy, what legislation do they have now on ground to open all those areas? This needs to be looked into.
Does it require legislation?
Absolutely. There are a lot of... Because now, the marine economy, Benue State cannot authoritatively take charge of that without the legislation, without allowing Benue State government, without allowing the House of Assembly to oversight and to check what everything belongs to the federal government. So these are issues that when we look at most of this legislation, we now look at states owning to the real resources, not just about the land through the Land Use Act, looking at what the state owns, The IGR belongs to the state. Whatsoever belongs to a local government should belong to the local government. The autonomy in that local government. I can tell you that Nigeria, within 5-10 years, the economy of this country, the reform that we are looking at, will change. But when all of us, the local government chairman, the governor, is waiting to come to FAC to receive what he will receive, gather his local government chairman and do FAC meeting and get whatever they want to get, and the local, it's so disheartening.
Honorable Bago, so a lot of countries now are turning to technology to help drive their economies, which in turn improves their revenue generation. You're chairman of the House Committee on Science and Tech.
Yeah.
And you've seen how tech startups in the country have been able to blossom into major companies, generating billions of dollars. How can this administration leverage on science and technology to improve revenue generation?
A lot. You see, COVID has opened our eyes to a lot of issues in terms of technology, in terms of science, in terms of innovation. There are a lot of things, I'm sure, before COVID in 2019 or 2018, you hardly even invite people to feature on your program through Zoom, when was Zoom known. So a lot of startups need to come into play. A lot of areas need to come into in terms of innovation. We are now looking at artificial intelligence. We are now looking at how we'll be able to bring technology in governance. When we bring technology into governance, I can tell you the cost of governance will reduce drastically. Because people with all this startup, you can see people will have ideas. People will start thinking on how to be able to look into how to generate revenue on their own, not to always wait on monthly salaries. Because of technology, a lot of young guys are doing legitimate businesses and they're getting paid on daily basis. A lot of apps are being produced that people download and they get a lot of resources and a lot of revenue from those apps. Government needs to look in. So when government sit down and say that within 4 years we're going to generate 5 million jobs, I categorically, I wouldn't say laugh, but smile. But I don't know, because I don't know how. Technology is the way forward. But when you say that within the next 4 years, you're going to open an enabling environment that 5 million youths will be self-reliant, 5 million youths can be able to live and to be able to generate their own income, I will now take you serious. But 5 million jobs, I don't know how you want to how you want to create those kind of jobs.
Okay, so you're more concerned about the environment, creating an enabling environment,
I can tell
than
you,
creating the jobs.
Exactly, but I can tell you that once we have enabling environment in this country,
jobs will be created.
Jobs will come. Okay. When we address the issue of insecurity, people will be ready to invest in this country. Once we address the issue of power, which is very key, you will see people will invest in this country. Because my desire and dream is that from that 774 local governments we have, each local government should have at least one industry. If each local government could be able to have one industry that has a lot of, almost up to 5,000 people under it, what are you now talking about?
That is private industries? Or
exactly, private industries.
Okay.
Because we should be able to look away from government establishing all these industries. Lastly, Terry, on this issue of this fact, you know, it gives me, or it takes away the joy in me that when, after Federal Executive Council meeting, we will be saying that government has given contract to build roads. Government has no business in doing that. And when government is now saying that 2 billion, 3 billion, whatever billions of naira is to build, giving contracts for roads in this place, we can privatize the road sector. We can bring out legislation that states can take that priority. And once states open up that, it will drastically reduce the cost of governance from the federal government. And you go to places that when you see those roads, they pay toll to be. It's being run by a private individual.
Honorable Bagos, let's look at something else now, which also is connected to the cost of the revenue generation and saving money for the country. It is the cost of governance, which the president is making efforts to cut. Today, the president said specifically that the UN General Assembly meeting that's supposed to hold, only people who are supposed to be actively involved should go. Now, this is one way that the president thinks he is cutting down the cost of governance. Is this commendable? I ask this because I recall that during plenary on 1 or 2 occasions, there have been concerns as to the number of aides attached to ministers and what have you. So in this regard, with regard to cutting down the cost of governance, do you commend the president for this, and what else can be done?
Yeah, I will advise government. Yeah, I'm commending him on that. We should be able to look at how we were able to run government during the COVID era. Presidents were not traveling around the country, around the world because of COVID. They were addressing any assembly through Zoom or through technology. I just watched the BRICS meeting where Putin addressed the BRICS nation through Zoom. And whatsoever decision that was taken, he was part of that decision. If at this particular moment, at this point in time, that we know that if the president is leaving to another country, is going to cost us hundreds of millions of naira, if not going with so much and so many aides, even him, if he's going to sit down in Asu Rock and just address the UN through Zoom, so be it, because hundreds of millions of naira that he will take it and go and come back will address one or two issues in terms of healthcare and others. That will be able. So I'm in support of that.
Another thing that I think Parliament would look at, I don't know if it's something worth considering from your perspective as a lawmaker, especially because there are also concerns as to how many trips the lawmakers make and how necessary they are outside this country. When you find those in the civil service going out for assignments, and the number, in most cases, is regarded as irrelevant. I know I've spoken with a number of lawmakers who have pointed out to the corruption in the civil service. Yeah. How is Parliament going to check something like this with regards to the number of travels, trips they make annually, and how important they are, not to mention the cost attached to them?
You see, that is why our embassies have been redundant. We have technical people. We have people that we have sent to every embassy. And when you look at what is spent on a daily basis for these meetings, my concern is that if you are spending 10 million to travel out for a certain government function, the value of that 10 million back to the country should be 10 times of what you have taken. So we should be able to look at the value of what we have spent on you in going out. What is it adding to the country? It's not just, even if it is to build your own capacity, we should be able to look at it in the next 2 to 6 months, that value, what have you brought as change in your own immediate office? So year in, year out, what are those reviews that have been done?
That's an oversight function of the National Assembly, isn't it?
It's not just even an oversight function of the National Assembly.
No, I think specifically it's an oversight function of the National Assembly.
In as much,
we will definitely be looking forward to the National Assembly bringing these things to the fore to say, with regards to this ministry, that ministry, this is what we've discovered and this is what we've decided can happen.
Yeah, let me give you an example with the Foreign Affairs Ministry. When we look at the budget of the Foreign Affairs, you see it's so bulky because of the aids that have been sent out for attaches and so on and so forth. But the question that I ask then is that, what are those business benefits that every ambassador has been able to bring back into the country for the period of 4 or 5 years that he stays in that very country? If you're an ambassador in a country, or if you're an attaché of government, and government is spending billions of naira through technical aid corps or whatever, what is the value that every ambassador? So this is a very serious issue that the president needs to look into. You should be able to start charging every ambassador that within the period of years that you are staying, we should be able to see the business opportunities that you have been able to bring back into the country. Don't just go out as an ambassador, and when your tenure has finished, you come back alone and you leave your family there to integrate into the system. So these are issues that we need to be able to look at value of monies that we spend in governance.
Honorable Dachung Bagos, thank you very much for your time on Politics Today.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.